The Las Vegas Raiders agreed to trade Trent Brown, a 7th-round pick, to the Patriots for a 5th-round pick. They're giving up on the guy that John Gruden called the LeBron James of right tackles. The LeBron James of right tackles is amazing gloss. Think about that. The only thing more amazing than the LeBron James of right tackles is trading the LeBron James of right tackles and getting a bag of footballs in exchange. Especially when you're doing that almost 2 years to the day that you signed him to a 4-year, $66 million deal and made him the highest paid tackle in the NFL at that time. So if you sign the LeBron James of right tackles and then you move him for a 5th-round pick 2 years later, then my man probably wasn't even the Michael Olowokandi of right tackles. And yes, it is pretty clear that he is not without blame himself. It's clear that both sides are to blame here. Like the Raiders did a pretty crappy job of evaluating him, and they did overpay him. And Brown did not live up to Gruden's LeBron James hype. And ultimately, he did want out. And he played just 5 games last season due to injuries and a COVID diagnosis. And the Athletic reported, quote, people inside the Raiders facility said the 6'8" Brown's weight ballooned to 400 pounds last year, end quote. Which reminds me of the time that LeBron James ballooned to over 400 pounds. Yeah, that never happened because the LeBron James of anything would not balloon to 4 bills. If your right tackle is walking around at 4 bills, then you signed the Sean Kemp of right tackles, not the LeBron James of right tackles. Oh, and then there's that fact that he came back from COVID and he was getting ready to face the Browns in November when something happened that resulted in him being sent to the hospital. Remember this tweet from Ian Rappaport, quote, Raiders OT Trent Brown was hospitalized today after a mishap with his pregame IV that caused air to enter his bloodstream and required immediate medical attention per me and Tom Pelissero. Brown will stay overnight for further tests. And a tweet. The old pregame IV mishap that leads to air getting into the bloodstream and a hospital stay. Happens to us all. Happens all the time. Yeah, that or it's never happened to anybody ever. How the hell do you have a pregame IV mishap that sends a player to the hospital and freaks out the rest of the team because they see their guy being wheeled out? Way to handle the LeBron James of right tackles. And that might explain why Brown liked a tweet from an account that tweeted, quote, maybe his next team won't inject an air bubble into his bloodstream, end quote. Hey, listen, I'm not saying that the Browns should have kept this guy, or the Raiders, I should say. Sometimes teams make a move that they think is going to work out, but it just doesn't. Not everything works. It happens. But it sure seems to happen a hell of a lot to the John Gruden Raiders. Look, I'm not even going to open up that old wound of the Khalil Mack trade. But Pete Damilatis of NBC Sports did bring back this old clip of Gruden talking in 2019 about all the good things that resulted because they didn't have to pay Khalil Mack. This is unbelievable. Let me read back part of that quote. Quote, if we did come up with the money to make the Khalil Mack contract happen last year, we wouldn't have any of the men we're talking about now. We would not have Trent Brown. We would not have Antonio Brown. We wouldn't have LaMarcus Joyner. We wouldn't have Vontaze Burfict. We wouldn't have Tyrell Williams. We wouldn't have any of them. End quote. That's right, chunk. You don't have any of them, which is incredible. How about a quick rundown of that list that you just ran down? Trent Brown, bust. Traded for a 5th-round pick. Antonio Brown, frostbite on his feet in the summer, threatened to punch your GM, cut before week 1, and on his second team since getting bounced from Vegas. LaMarcus Joyner, released yesterday. Vontaze Burfict played 4 games for the Raiders in 2019 before being suspended 12 games for yet another illegal hit, currently out of the league. Tyrell Williams spent last season on injured reserve, cut by the Raiders last month. So how is that even possible? How could that guy list off 5 guys in 2019 and not one of them sticks? Not one of them hits. Not one. Not only did not one of them hit, none of them are with the team right now, and 2 of them spent a good chunk of that time out of the league, which is really pretty amazing. Oh, and I'm pretty sure, I'd have to check, but I'm pretty sure that Khalil Mack is still with the Bears and doing just fine and continuing his Hall of Fame career. I'm telling you, Gruden, he should be looking for the nearest camera so he can look directly into it and tell LeBron James how sorry he is because he owes LeBron an apology. You clearly have no idea who LeBron is or how great he is if you're using his name on a guy who you just traded for next to nothing. If you're talking about paying a guy to be the LeBron James of right tackles, he better be the LeBron James of right tackles, or else you are the LeBron James of horrible talent evaluators. I mean, do you think the Raiders staff saw Tyrod Taylor get his lung punctured in week 2 and thought, you think that's a mishap? You call that a mishap? Hey, y'all, watch this. Watch what we do to our guy. Raider fan, here's hoping that in the upcoming draft, you get the Kevin Durant of tackles and not the Benoit Benjamin of linebackers or the Sam Bowie of receivers or the Kwame Brown of safeties or the Greg Oden of corners. Yeah, we got the LeBron James of right tackles right here. Sure you don't.